Hello everyone, it's Sak here from LINDSAK and I'm joined today by Maureen Deary. Maureen's a further education and skills, as well as an independent schools inspector, strategic advisor on governance, leadership and management, and quality for the FE and skills sector. Maureen also is the Director of Quality for ESS Assist, working very closely with Ian Peacock. So Maureen, how are you?
Very well, thank you, Sak. Thank you for the opportunity to work with you and talk to our colleagues and provide your organisations too.
No, well, it's a really interesting time at the moment. I know SAR's big on the agenda for a lot of providers. So I suppose with your experience, Maureen, in the work that you do, how would you structure a robust and effective SAR that meets the current good practice in FE skills in the workplace learning sector?
Okay, well, with the SAR and the timing at the moment, very established providers that have been around for a long time are busy writing their SARs at the moment, or they've actually almost finished them and they're going to their senior leadership team or the board for sign off, usually by the end of December, and then uploaded onto the regulatory body, i.e. Ofsted portal, for the end of January. If you are a new provider and you haven't received a regulatory inspection visit previously, then this is the time that, if you haven't thought about your self-assessment report and your quality improvement plan, so that's your 2019-20 SAR and your 2020-21 QIP, then this is the time that, albeit it's prior to Christmas, you need to start thinking about weaving that into your workflow early in January as well. And although we have the latest guidance from Ofsted on the 7th of December, an update about the inspection cycle from January to March, it's about good operational practice. This isn't just about, being ready for an Ofsted inspection. I don't work in that way when I'm working with provider organisations, and we don't at ESS Assist. It's actually about embedding the education inspection framework, the key judgment requirements to meet the good practice, and that gives us a framework for the quality improvement cycle and all the processes. Why reinvent the wheel? So when you look at that and then you come to your self-assessment report, if you write and structure it in the same order as the education inspection framework, that's in 2021, then that gives you a really effective, robust flow to your self-assessment report without it being war and peace.
And it's so important though, Maureen, as well, because I think sometimes providers run the risk of being Ofsted ready as opposed to embedding quality in their operations. So I suppose on that, I mean, what tips or advice could you give to someone looking at the education inspection framework around structuring it so with the SARs that you're writing, and I suppose almost 4 key judgment bullet points required in more detail?
Yes, and that's a really relevant point again. Ofsted ready isn't the right term at all that we hear so often within our FE and skills sector. It's about having daily operational good practice as part of all of your quality processes that put your learner, and that includes apprentices, adult learner loans, at the very heart of what you do. So it's not just a knee-jerk reaction when you think you're going to be inspected, for instance, by any regulatory body, or you're going to have an ESFA audit. It's about having all of those processes in place within your quality framework, with regular reviews against the processes and the learner journey and each stage of the learner journey. And if you've got the evidence base for that in what we call the deep dive curriculum reviews, auditing, sampling, our IQA practice as well, all contributes towards that. If quality management then complete executive summary reports for the senior leadership team on a monthly basis, which is what we do in the organisations I work very closely within, it feeds upwards into the SAR. So there's no last minute knee-jerk reaction of, oh, I've got to write the SAR, it's August, or oh, it's December and we haven't done it. But actually you've got this ongoing cycle of continuous SAR work throughout the year, and you don't just leave it to writing in a darkened room for 1 month.
And so I suppose sorry, go on. Sorry.
So the outline of that and the way in which we work is to keep that going through and through and follow the order of the education inspection framework. So in terms of the way it's structured and the way that we use it, it's actually following the flow of the education inspection framework and flow through the report in the way that an inspection report would be written, and that works really well.
And so just talking about the 4 key judgment bullet points required, how would you identify those? What advice would you give to people around that?
Okay, and really this is around the structure of the SAR per se as well.
Yeah.
So the SARs that I design and work with, and I only write these for when I'm working directly within an organisation, because you shouldn't really have an author that's coming in externally, because they don't know the flavour and the skin of the organisation and how you work on a daily basis at all. So you'll have your context statements in the background of what you look like as a provider,
Yeah.
what you do, what your learner profile is like, where you work across the country and deliver to learners, and maybe some of the employers, and that will all go in your context. You'll have your learner profile. You'll have your SAR table, whether you use the grades, numbers, whether you use words, evaluative words, against your overall effectiveness, followed by the quality of education, followed by behaviours and attitudes, personal development, and last but not least, leadership and management. So if all those other key judgments are looking good, then that all adds up to the fact that your leadership and management actually is looking pretty sound, and that you can say, we're good at what we do. And again, I do want to reiterate, this isn't for the purpose just for a regulatory body.
Yeah.
A SAR should be reflective and ongoing, and we use it at leadership and management and with our practitioner teams of expert colleagues who work with learners to make sure that we are reflecting on what we did well, but we pull out of that the key priorities that informs our action planning as we work through.
And I suppose that's how you'd embed it, embed that quality within operations. And Maureen, you've talked there about a couple of the key bullet points. I mean, for the people who are physically writing those SARs and composing those statements, any tips or suggestions?
In terms of writing the SAR, again, the tips and suggestions are around have the inspection framework by the side of you, which might be Ofsted, it could be independent schools, it could be Care Quality Commission, it could be one for residential provision.
Yeah.
But if you look at the bullet point requirements that sit within a key judgment within an inspection framework, look at that and think, where is my evidence base? So where am I going to gather it from within my organisation at each layer of the way in which we work? You might be very linear, you might be more hierarchical. Pull that evidence base together, and that evidence base is a variety of sort of aspects of the learner's journey in each stage, recording, tracking and monitoring evidence base, evaluative written feedback to learners, for instance, scrutiny, audits, sampling in deep dive reviews, conversations, professional discussions with learners, professional discussions with employers, employer and learner feedback through surveys, quality improvement plan, progress, and what's so important in a SAR is impact.
Yeah.
So out of those 3 I's that sit in the quality of education, the intent, your strategic direction and operational direction, your implementation, the doing, the planning, the work that you do on a daily basis, all needs to be measured, because we don't know how good we are as a provider unless it tells us in the impact statements. Yeah. And in the impact statement, we make an evaluative judgment. We state why, which is our evidence base, a piece of evidence. And we say, and this is the impact. And it's the impact on learners, not the process. It's not about the process. You write about impact on learners, impact on their new skills and knowledge. What could they do differently that they couldn't do at the start of their course, qualification, apprenticeship?
And it's so interesting you say that, Maureen, because I suppose it just further demonstrates how quality needs to be embedded into operations, as opposed to, like you said, two working in isolation that talk occasionally. I suppose any other kind of factors or points to consider when writing your SAR, and I suppose equally, how and where could ESS assist in that?
Right, well, first of all, in terms of writing it, and it really does need to flow, but it doesn't need to be War and Peace as a book, as a text at all. And really, it's keeping it lean and process-driven that sits underneath, but you write about the impacts all the way through. The grading descriptors in the education inspection framework really help the author to write, or the authors. And I'll just the caveat to that is that a SAR should be a whole organisation approach. 1 or 2 people shouldn't be sitting in that darkened room somewhere down the end of the corridor writing the SAR or burning the midnight oil. It should be feeding from our expert practitioner level, our delivery teams, and upwards management contributing and feeding upwards to the team that are going to write the SAR, and everybody should be actively involved in that as well. One of the key things to consider is that the quality of education sits at the very heart of your self-assessment report, because it's all about learners. Personal development, of course, behaviour and attitudes also are, you know, they're meaty factors, but the intent in getting the flow through to the implementation, the doing, the planning, the delivery, and the measurement of impact and the different sort of systems and processes you have and conversations to measure impact, that really sits in that 50% bulk of the quality of education. So it's making sure you get that right. You'll know that data isn't the be all and end all. And we're often waiting quite a while for our validated data as well. So I actually do an update of the SAR. So I'll write it to the contractual year from the 1st of August to the 31st of July. So it fits in with the ESFA contractual year. I do an update to the end of October. So that at the end of October on the 30th, it's been updated with the ESFA ILR period 14 data, because we're pretty secure that we've got all of the apprenticeship or learner achievement rates for that contractual year, say 1920, with relevant data that we can say is pretty valid and reliable. And it should be if our management information systems and data collection systems work very well, that we can put the data into the quality of education impact in our SAR. And we can analyse it, and we can write about how successful we've been or not, unfortunately, as the case may be, with particular courses and programmes and apprenticeship standards. Following on from that, you're looking at the behaviour and attitudes aspects and how employers very much, or work placements if you've got traineeships, and study programs for young people, adult programs for young people, looking at how those behaviours and attitudes might have changed, and what are the factors that have helped them change as well, and how do those behaviours and attitudes of a learner actually contribute more to the work that they do or their personal lives. Following on from that is the personal development aspect. And it tends to be quite a lot of information that you need to bring in succinctly. So it is about succinct, evaluative writing, making a judgment, using the evidence, but don't talk forever about it, and writing about the impact. And then you've got your leadership and management afterwards, of which part of that you need to be writing about safeguarding and prevent. And that's quite a sort of significant piece to really reflect on, using the grading descriptors in the EIF, and of course governance as well.
No, that sounds great. And Maureen, I think you've clearly demonstrated, like I said, your quality provision and your operations provision, as well as your leadership and management, needs to be driven by that delivery, and how all of that links in together to create, you know, reflective and quite comprehensive SAR.
Yes.
What if there are providers out there who are kind of addressing their SAR, looking at it, revamping it? What's the best way to get hold of ESS Assist?
ESS Assist are on LinkedIn, of course, and Ian Peacock posts every day on LinkedIn. So we also have a newsletter that sits on LinkedIn as well, and that's disseminated out to all providers that use Ian's ESS Assist tender tracker to look for potential tenders that a provider might bid for. And we also have details on LinkedIn of the contact numbers and the email addresses as well.
No, perfect.
And you'll find ESS Assist on the website too. If you Google ESS Assist, you'll get straight into their website.
Perfect. Maureen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing your words of wisdom. And yeah, guys, if you're looking at your SAR at the moment, if you need some support, then definitely get in touch with the ESS Assist. You can get in hold of them, as Maureen's mentioned. They're also on LINDSAK as well. But no, thanks for your time, Maureen, and hopefully speak soon.
Thanks very much, Zach.
Right.
Lovely.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.